need to learn to work smarter, not harder, and how a simple mindset shift can transform your team, your business, and maybe even your life. So please welcome Brett.
How are we going? We've got the mic on. What an extraordinary group of young people we've just seen. I don't know whether you know, but the top 2 fears in the entire world are, number 1, you won't be surprised to know, being eaten by a shark. Guess what number 2 is? Public speaking. So let's have another round of applause for our young people who got up here and did a spectacular job. The global pandemic, although it was incredibly disruptive and it was devastating to many, was a bit of a cloud with a silver lining, because it gave us a chance to see a new way of doing things. It gave us a chance to look at how we work together a little bit differently. I think that, what we're going to see, and I'm seeing in my work, an enormous change in the way we lead, in the way that we behave, in the way that we collaborate. So, I think what we're going to see is a new way of working smarter, not harder. Because what happened before the pandemic, we had a huge growth in business, in organisations, and unfortunately a lot of that work, that growth, came on the back of hard work, grit, grind, working 60 hours a week. And that's just not sustainable. And so I think one of the things that COVID did for us was that suddenly we were isolated. Suddenly we couldn't be with each other in person. And I don't know about you, but that hurt. I play in a band, for fun, and suddenly I couldn't play with my bandmates, and we couldn't see our parents who were in homes, and it was really difficult. And it made us crave wanting to get back together. It was really pretty cool. I think what it's going to give us is this opportunity to come into a new age, because we're rethinking what's important to us. The pandemic gave us a chance to reassess, and I think one of the top things that it has done for us is to bring in a new age of meaning. We're going to talk about that. Meaning in your work, meaning in your life, because sitting at home, doing nothing and binging on Netflix, or catching up on Australian Story, it just isn't a great way to live. Doing work that is meaningful is one of the most powerful motivating forces. We are entering an age of new autonomy. Those of you who are working in workforces and groups will know that the younger generation really want a lot of autonomy. We don't really want to give it up just yet. A new age of harmonising work and life. We used to call it work-life balance, but we're actually finding, this new age is going to present an opportunity for us to do meaningful work that harmonises with our most important roles. And I don't know about you, but my most important role is husband and father. I'll give up work any day for that. So, it's a really great chance to flip it around. It's a new age of curiosity. So many things happened during COVID that completely changed the way we think about things, and it actually came on people saying, what if? I wonder if we could do that. Could we create a vaccine in 9 months? Turns out we could. One of the things that I see every day is this idea called synergy. And I see it in teams, I see it in all sorts of places, but it's actually kind of the secret sauce of life. Synergy is kind of scientifically defined as when the sum of the parts, when the result is greater than the sum of the parts. Now, who's made one of those baking soda volcanoes back when they were in school? They were great, weren't they? Right? That is synergy, where baking soda and vinegar comes together and the result is huge, right? And of course, YouTube's full of fantastic versions of that. That's synergy. But we see synergy between human beings. When we get this is synergistic. Like, what is coming out of this conference is so much greater than just the sum of the parts that go in there. I see it in great sporting teams. I'm a reasonably highly credentialed soccer coach, or as the rest of the world calls it, football. I'm bilingual, I speak both. We see it, unfortunately we see it in the All Blacks, more than we see it in the Waratahs. I love them, they are an extraordinary team. They are a team that has the highest win rate of any team in any competition in the history of the world, from New Zealand, right? Their synergy, thank you. Yeah, don't run it. Their synergy is extraordinary. It's because they're committed. They're powerful in that commitment. And I see it in great bands. One of my favourite musical experiences is seeing Bruce Springsteen live. Anyone seen Bruce Springsteen live? Now, I'm not a dyed-in-the-wool Springsteen fan. I can't tell you all his songs. But he is the most extraordinary performer and leader on stage I've ever seen. He brings, 20,000 people and his band together, and it's extraordinary, right? Those who I can see some noise. So, I want you to have a little bit of an experience of this. So the first thing I'd like you to do is, I want to practice something. I want to see if, on a countdown, 3, 2, 1, we can do a nice, crisp, single clap. We ready? Yeah, we go. Okay, we're going to put things down. All right, we ready? 3, 2, 1. It's not bad. I'm not sure I'd call it. I wouldn't bring it to the boss, to Springsteen, and say nice. Okay, let's try again. This time I want you to focus. Focus on the people next to you. Focus on, and we're nice, crisp clap. 3, 2, 1. Oh! That was like twice as good. All right, one more. 3, 2, 1. It's really good. Okay, now I want you to put your hand up in the air, as high as you can get it. My shoulders are a bit fun. I want you to put your hand on the shoulder of the person next to you, or if you're on the end of the road, you can turn back, and I want you to say, uh-oh, he's interactive. All right. We are going to experience a bit of that Springsteen effect this afternoon, and a bit of synergy, because we're going to perform a song together. We are going to become a band. Now, I've got my guitar, so I'm going to join in, right? But I need to divide the room roughly down the middle. Okay, so all of these people on this side, you're going to do this, right, on your left. Or you can click if clicking's easier, right? But you're doing, right? That's it. Or you can stomp if you're up there. If you can get a stomp up there, that's good. All right, hold it there. You guys on this side are going to do our single crisp clap. Right? Together, it's going to be. All right, let's play that backing track, Mr. Music. Now, this is a great song. We're going to start you off with this. Now, this isn't as easy as you think it is. All right, so let's start. You ready? Oh, you guys are good at this. Tamworth must have something in the water when it comes to music. All right, and you've got to be a little bit aware of the people around you, because it's got to be nice and crisp. Can't get distracted. Kind of need to elbow someone if they're letting the team down. Go, come on, you can do it better than that. And we've got to keep it up through all sorts of distractions. All right. So your job, keep this going. I think I might join in.
it, see what's behind it. Got no way to prove it, so maybe I'm blind. But I'm only human after all. I'm only human after all. Don't put your blame on me. Don't put your blame on me. Some people got the weird problems. Some people have love. Some people think so dumb. Love is above. I'm only human after all. I'm only human after all. Don't put the blame on me. Don't put the blame on me.
Well done, everybody. Round of applause. We just turned you into a band. That's pretty cool, isn't it? All right. Let me pop this down here. Ah. All right. What the heck just happened there? Well, you experienced a bit of that connectedness, a bit of that committedness, a bit of that synergy, right? And it has a couple of parts to it, and this is kind of what I want to teach you a little bit about this afternoon, right? There's three parts. There's a mindset part, there's a leadership part, and there's an innovation part. Just so happens that they are the exact three things you need to lead a team, to lead a Rotary group, to lead a business, to lead a country. It's actually what we need for the next 5 years. So, you're probably saying, who the heck is this clown up on stage? My name is Brett. I run a business called The Culture Coach. I'm a business coach, which means I have a couple of private clients and I go in and I help them, build their business. If the business isn't going so well, we fix it. If we, if the organisation is a bit misaligned, I go in and realign them. I'm, pretty good at my job, and we get great results. And I work with charities and businesses and all sorts of people. I've got some pretty cool clients. I get to turn up and talk to you about things that I'm really passionate about, because I'm really passionate about the way we connect to each other. I'm really passionate about the way we work together, and I'm really passionate about the impact that all of that has. So there's I've worked with large music festivals. It takes quite a lot to put a music festival on, and the team can get a little bit disjointed. And I've worked with small to medium businesses, and a few of my clients are out here in regional, and this is actually how I got to be introduced to you guys. Some of my clients are up in Scone, and they're extraordinary. They started off as a little landscaping business, and now they're employing something like 9 people from overseas. It's amazing, right, what they're doing. I wrote a book about my experience, because being a soccer coach, I thought, I'd really like to teach this into a soccer team and see what happens. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a minute. This is the first book, and of course, it's a little bit of an addiction. Once you write one, you write another, and I've done a half a dozen books now, which you can actually go and download for free. You can get the ebook copy at my website, which is theculturecoach.global. I've got all of my books up there, and I highly encourage you to go and grab a free copy. They're just full of good news. If you would like to hear me in conversation with lots of other people talking about how we work together, I've got this new podcast, Working Together, which is available on Spotify and all those places. And we talk with musicians, we talk with business leaders, we talk with all sorts of people to find out what the secrets are of how we work together, because it's such an empowering thing to do. The reason I'm sharing this today is because although I'm a business coach, and that means we've got to achieve certain results, or if I go into an organisation, we've got a job to do, I actually think the work I do transforms lives. And one of those examples was a client I took on in Adelaide. They're a small, mid-sized family business. The managing director was a great guy, but sceptical. Oh, Brett, I don't know whether this culture stuff works. I'm not sure, but I'll give it a go. Now, he was a little bit different because he was a soldier in the Iraq War and received some pretty significant brain injury. And so, you know, his prospects weren't that great. But he gave it a red hot go, and he is now leading a team of about 30 people who are doing amazing profits. And he says to me, I'm just as happy as I've ever been. Even better, when he's had some recent kind of marriage troubles, he leant back on the work that we're doing, particularly this mindset thing I'm about to teach you, and it saved his marriage. He's not only a better worker, he's a better dad, a better husband, a better mate. That's why I want to tell you about this, because I think you know, if just one of you goes away feeling like, oh yeah, I got this, then that's my job done. I think what we're seeing is three big problems at the moment. One, we've got a responsibility gap. What that means is few and few people are stepping up to take responsibility for businesses, for organisations. Volunteerism is a little bit challenging at the moment. I mean, actually, I think it always has been, but you know, I'm preaching to the wrong crowd here because you know you guys are all amazing, right? But there was even a local business that Bennett Surfboards, which is I'm a surfer, so that's quite a famous name. They had to close the business because no one would step up and either buy or take over the business. Huge responsibility gap. And what's happening is organisations, and when I say organisations, I mean businesses, small businesses, large charities, you know, community groups, unfortunately are drowning in blame, excuses, and drama. And that's the thing that really kills a good team. It kills a band, it kills a community, it kills a business really fast. And it's kind of, I want to introduce you to this thing called the Karpman Drama Triangle. And I learned about this many decades ago when in psychology in uni, and it's a really good example of why that responsibility gap's not happening. Because Karpman developed this triangle where he said this pretty much describes most dysfunctional relationships, where we play three roles. We play the role of the hero, or we play the role of the villain, or we play the role of the victim. Now, everyone knows what a victim looks like. It's always someone else's fault. It's always someone else's problem. I didn't do anything to it. You know, I have a few teenagers in my house, and they tend to live there. Despite having a dad who wrote a book about the opposite way to do it. But for most of you, and most of my business leaders, they really struggle with the hero, which is diving in to save the day. The problem with diving in to save the day is it doesn't create future leaders behind you. So the Karpman Drama Triangle really describes a lot of what's going on that's stopping us grow in our teams. The second problem is that no one's stepping up and current leaders are burning out. I don't know about you, but so many of my friends who are in high, you know, I'm from Sydney, so they're in sort of high-level corporate, they're turning 60 and still doing 60 hours a week. They are burning out, and they just don't have the fuel to do it anymore. And business leaders, we before COVID happened, we had this myth that, you know, if you grind it out, if you grit it out, if you work more hours, you'll be more successful. But one of those gifts that COVID gave us was that it's not about that anymore. Our job is to create leaders, because we've been focusing on being the most expert and jumping in and fixing things for our team. What we actually need to do is the opposite of the drama triangle, which is we need to create an environment where we coach, where we challenge, and we create. Because all of these make the basic assumption that you can do it. You can do it. My team, you've got this. We just need, if you've got a skills gap, let's fill that gap. If you need to learn something, if you need help, let's sort it out. Right? This is what leaders need to start thinking about doing. The third thing is, how do I get my team to go the extra mile? Especially if your team are younger than the average age of this room. Yeah? We know that problem, millennials, and actually all of them in that kind of group. The thing is, there's a huge gap between the way we attempt to motivate them and the way they want to be motivated. Our generation, the older generation, I'm Gen X, you tell Gen X to go and do something, we just, okay, off we go. We don't question why. The younger generations, they kind of question why. And it's probably the thing I hear the most, oh, it's asking why. I actually think that's the best thing ever. Because they're the most purpose-driven generation for years. Give them a purpose, they'll go. We're just not good at giving them a purpose. So, what I want to show you today is these 3 things that are going to make a huge difference. Now, you might say to yourself, I don't run a team. I'm not the president of my local chat. I'm not this. If you're connecting with even 2 people, you're a team. So whether you're a family, whether you're a small team, whether you're a large team, these principles apply. First, the personal mindset. A way of thinking that is a little bit different to what we've done before. Second, we've got to think, my job is to create leaders. Because if I said your job is to make yourself completely redundant, completely, and everyone else does the work behind you, we think, oh, well, that's bloodshed. Actually, it's not, that's real leadership. Because then there's no burning out. So, let's look at some of those. I'm of the belief, and I've seen this proven over and over again, you don't build a business, you build a team, and they build a business. Now, we could take our business, and we could say community organisation. We could say project, we could say anything. Because it's actually the team that builds that project for you. We've got a few problems with that. Because when I say to people, I had a great meeting with an accountant that I work with, and I said, what's your number 1 problem that all your people come in with? Anyone guess what word they always say? People. People are my number 1 problem. And it's because we've never been taught really how to lead people or how to be agile and flexible with our teams. So what this has resulted in, and how we know this is a problem, is engagement scores. Now, engagement is a measure of how much people are doing in your team. So if we were a football team or if we were a Rotary team, what we find is the people who are really in there and actively engaged is actually about 24%. So 24% of all businesses and organisations in Australia have people who are actively engaged. They have 16% of each team who are actively disengaged. We'll talk about that in a minute. And the rest are just passengers. So to illustrate this, if we were all in a rowboat, 24% of us are actually rowing. 16% of us are throwing an anchor out, stopping us get to the other side. What do the rest do? Roughly 50%? They're passengers. They're just watching it all happen. Now, as I mentioned to you, I coach soccer. I also play soccer for the first time ever. I'm playing in an over 55s comp this year. Looking forward to that. But there's 11 people on a soccer team. If we apply those statistics to a soccer team, that means 3 of our team are actually trying to win the game. And 2 are trying to win it for the opposition. Which leaves 6 going, this is a good game. Spectators. They're just spectating on the field. Now, if you're the 3 that are trying to win the game, it's exhausting. That's where the burnout's coming from in our organisations. But here's the good news. This simple framework is really changing things up quite a lot. And I'm going to challenge you today, because you can sit here and go, oh, you're quite entertaining, actually. Or you can take this idea away and you can put it into practice. And that's my challenge to you, because it unlocks the potential of teams. And I'll tell you how I know in just a minute. Because the other thing I really want you to know is it does not take a president, a designated leader, or a title to be a leader. Leadership is simply about action. Every one of you did a great job of leading when we did our performance. It was fantastic. In fact, it's the best I've ever seen in an audience. No, it truly is. I know. Okay, let me tell you how I know this. Because playing above the line is a model of thinking, and you'll notice that my books are called Playing Above the Line, which is how I create a winning team, and then Staying Above the Line, which is how I keep the winning team going. Many years ago, actually I don't know how many years ago, that's making me sound old. Some years ago I was given a soccer team, football team, of 16-year-olds, and they were pretty athletic, they were very capable. But in the first year I took them, they lost every single game. We're actually in a division a little bit higher than what we should have been, and we were smashed every week. The following year, I thought, rather than import a whole bunch of highly skilled players, I wonder if this playing above the line mentality might change the way they think. And so, these young 16-year-olds, I explained to them, I said, okay, here's what's going to do. We're going to play above the line. It means what we need to do is take 100% responsibility for how we play. And we need to eliminate blame and excuse and drama from our game. I'm talking to 16-year-olds. They live in blame and drama and dog ate my homework, right? That's their happy place. So we, I said, well, if you're going to play below the line, if you're always going to blame, no, I was up till 2 o'clock in the morning, coach, playing PlayStation, that's why I'm not playing so well. Okay, you're a victim. When you're playing below the line, you're a victim to other stuff. You're not in control of what you do. Or you can actually take responsibility. And this idea is so powerful that I actually think that the disadvantaged of the next generation will actually be those who are unable or refuse to take responsibility for their own actions. It creates victims. And we see it everywhere. And victims are powerless. A victim has no power. And now, it's sort of where we live, because being a victim is all about protection, right? It's actually your amygdala going, no, don't, just don't do anything, something bad will happen, right? So it's not, it's something that's kind of biologically wired into us. But these guys and one girl, so guys is my generic, right? We all agreed that we'd play the season playing above the line, and that we would eliminate blame, excuse, and drama from our game, and from the way we communicate with each other. Because that's called playing below the line, and that's giving the power away to someone else. We decided instead what we would do was we would take 100% responsibility, no blame, no excuses, no drama, and take 100% responsibility for the results we wanted. Now, I sort of said to them, what results do you want? And they said, well, we'd really love to play in a grand final, that'd be awesome, but having just lost every game last season, we thought, let's make your goal getting into the Final Four to challenge for the grand final. And we're all pumped about that. And this is how we're going to do it. The results were actually, that year they didn't lose a single game. In fact, they won the premiership by 15 points. That means they could have sat on the hands for 5 games and still won the premiership. They're extraordinary. They beat all the teams that they got beaten by the previous year, which confused them enormously. Some of my mates were coaching them and said, what have you done to them? Because we just can't find a way through it. We did not import a marquee player. We didn't, one of my players was so uncoordinated, his dad said he struggles to organise breakfast in the morning. So we're not talking elite soccer players here, but they were extraordinary. They went on, when you win in soccer, you go up a division and up a division, and they eventually got to under 18s and won first division. When you do that, you get to play what's called Champions League, which is where you play the first division winner of the under 18s from all over the state. Long story short, they came 4th in the entire state. Extraordinary. But more than that, they learned what it's like to work in a high-performing team. They learned what makes it work, and they learned what makes it not work. And they carried that forward. They're all now 24-ish, you know, and I don't know about you, but I would employ one of those every day of the week because they know what it means. Playing above the line, it changes everything. The second major thing is that leaders create leaders. Right? Now this is such a different, it sounds so obvious, but it's so different because our job is to create leaders. Now this is, you know, in my work as a coach, you know, a lot of people think, oh, coach is going to come in with all the answers. No, that's not my job. My job is, someone said it earlier on, if I give a man a fish, he eats for a day, I teach him how to fish, he eats forever. My job is to challenge them to lift. That's what coaches do. We come in and we move you from this point to that point. And it's incredibly rewarding work. But oh my gosh, it's really hard to get business leaders to take a day off because they have boss guilt. Because they go, oh no, the old paradigm is actually that I've got to work. No, the new leader needs to sort of elevate their thinking a little bit. So if I said to you, your job is to create more leaders, what would you do with them? I don't know about you, but with some of my clients, I have, in fact last week, I wanted them to know that when I push them really hard, they can handle it. So I took them whitewater rafting. Now, a bunch of middle-aged business people in Sydney go whitewater rafting, it freaks them out a little bit. And they thrived. And then the previous year, I actually wanted them to fly a plane, but that freaked them out a little bit too much. So we hired a simulator and they flew a 737 simulator. And it's all about getting them, accelerating their learning to another stage. The other thing about it is it's team first, not me first. We've got this huge cult of celebrity leaders. You know, we hear about them all the time, but the reality is, that's just unrealistic. Team gets everything done. So team first. Leaders create leaders. The problem is, people can be challenging. And Paul Roos said it best, no dickhead policy. He was the AFL coach for many very successful people. But dealing with people has been pretty difficult, right? So here's a quick representation of something I think is really powerful. The leader of the next 5 years needs to have these 3 qualities. Number 1, highly developed people skills. Not good people skills, highly developed people skills. Because there's a lot of stress and trauma in the community, and leading that is hard. So things like learning to listen, like one of my recent podcast guests is a commander in the Australian Navy, and he said the 2 most valuable tools in his tool belt are vulnerability, the ability to admit when you don't know, and number 2, the ability to listen and really hear. Isn't that extraordinary? From a Navy officer. Database decisions, I think that's just, you know, we can't just go off on hunches anymore. And innovation and creativity. So, as leaders, the way we're going to create more leaders is by developing these people skills, by using the data. Even when working with people, I use things like DISC profiles and psychological testing, because it just tells us where people's strengths are. It tells us how we can get the most out of them. If we put a square peg in a round hole, it's going to be hard. So let's put a square peg in a square hole. Make it easy. Creativity is not something which most business leaders say, oh yeah, that's high on my list. But innovation and creativity when it comes to leading your team, I think is one of the most extraordinary things. One of the things that you can do in terms of your creativity is to be so clear about where you're going and what you're doing and what your mission is that everyone gets it. Now, most of you know that JFK went, we're going to the moon and we're coming back. And he formed NASA. And a couple of years later, he was touring NASA and he got lost. He went down the wrong corridor and he bumped into a janitor. And he said, hi, I'm JFK. I'm the president. What do you do? He said, well, Mr. President, I'm a janitor and I'm helping put a man on the moon. Right then, they all knew what they were doing. They knew what their purpose was. He knew that being a janitor was helping the scientists put a man on the moon. And if we could be creative about how we express that in our teams, even in our families, wouldn't that be cool? I actually think the other thing that's really important when it comes to these new leadership skills is being able to paint a very bright future. Because COVID just knocked us off our perch. We don't know what the hell's going on next. The ability to paint a bright future, and I actually think this generation coming behind us are so creative and so fascinating and so purpose-driven. We've just got this great opportunity. The only reason they're not getting more involved is we haven't bridged the gap yet. That's above the line. Once we bridge that gap, they'll be unstoppable. Because meaning is so important for them. But interestingly, what COVID showed us was that meaning is important for everyone. Because sitting at home doing nothing is not a good way to live life. We all want a little bit of meaning. So bringing a bit of meaning into the way you lead teams is powerfully important. And all of this, I guess, is best described as transformational leadership. As compared to the opposite is transactional leadership. Lots of businesses, lots of organisations are trying to buy people to come and work for them at the moment. They're offering them double the amount of money that they're getting somewhere to come and work for them. That's a transaction. Transaction lasts about 6 weeks. Give someone a pay rise. Who's got 2? You give them a pay rise. Lasts what? 6, 8 weeks. The effect? Same. Bring someone in, pay them lots of money. But what we're missing is that opportunity to identify what's meaningful and what's impactful about the work that they do. One of the big things that I want to encourage you to do if you're a leader is to take time out. Abraham Lincoln had this great saying, and he said, if I was given 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend 4 hours sharpening the axe. Isn't that great? I think we are hacking away at trees with blunt axes too much. What it means is getting out. I'm a huge fan of connecting to bush and country and this wonderful place we live. That's where lots of inspiration comes from. We're not doing that because we feel like we're bludgeoning. But the leaders, you need to get out and sharpen your axe a little bit. So I want to sort of start to wrap up because I want to offer these challenges to you. Because what if instead of this disconnected, we started to become kind of a beacon of somewhere to belong? And one of the things about this generation coming behind us is they desperately want to belong. Desperately. So how can we get them belonging? How can we become a beacon of belonging? What if instead of problems, this doesn't happen, or that won't work because of this, or that won't work because of that, which is below the line thinking, what if instead we focus on what's working and solutions? Because actually we're living in the most abundant time in history. Lots of data to suggest that this is the best time to be alive ever. Right? So what if we focused on that? What if instead of transactions, we actually focused on transformation and we started to motivate with inspiration, meaning and passion? I think that would transform so many businesses, organisations, communities, families. So my challenge to you is the 48-hour challenge, which is, can we go for 48 hours without blaming, making excuses, or getting into unnecessary drama? And my wife would probably tell you that's a challenge for me, and I wrote the book. What do you do instead? You say, well, what can I control? What can I be responsible for, and how can I change it? It's incredibly exciting to know that you're in charge of your future. Even the conversation you have with the next person, you can take responsibility for that. I see it in my favourite football team, Liverpool. Because they say you'll never walk alone, and I'm yet to sit in that stadium and sing that song with them, but one day I will. Because that's what really moves me. Being with a team, never walking alone, and just really achieving phenomenal things. I'm hugely inspired because we live in Australia and there's this tall poppy thing. Who am I to be good at something? Who am I to tell people I'm good at something? What Nelson Mandela actually said, well, actually, who are you not to? You're ripping everybody off if you play sport. So I want to encourage you in whatever capacity that you are in your teams, particularly in your Rotary teams, to lead. Let's take it to the next level, and let's start with playing above the line. And I'm so excited that the theme of this is better together, because I think you guys are extraordinary, and I think you've got this. Thank you very much for having me. So yes, if you've got your people questions or any questions about my stuff, I would love to chat with you. Is mic on? Roving mics on? You can talk. I can hear you from there. I'll repeat it.
I have a small age about big course. Can I just ask you, because Ted Lasso is good. And I've got to ask the question. Do you watch it? And do you get
So,
inspired by Ted Lasso?
my favourite show in the world was The West Wing, until Ted Lasso came on. I introduced it to everyone. Ted Lasso, for those who haven't met him yet, is a bit of a fish out of water story on Apple TV. I signed up to Apple TV just so I could watch it, and everyone I have introduced this to, including my 79-year-old mother, loves it. Look it up. It is just a shot of beauty in a grey world. Thank you. Yes.
Anyone else like to ask a question?
Yeah.
Have you joined Rotary yet?
Not yet.
Why not?
I have two businesses that operate in 11 countries, 4 children, 2 soccer teams. No, that's just why I haven't. That's not an excuse. I have not been asked.
So, Brent,
Where's that?
right here. Sorry.
Yeah, right, no, I can see.
How do we get more members? That's more like what would be of interest to us, especially of the younger generation.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yep. I think that's a great question. How do we get more members, right? Ask people. Do you know what the #1 reason people don't buy anything for? Do you know what it is? You'd think it's price, right? Oh, it's too expensive. Or you think, the #1 reason that people don't buy is perceived indifference. 58% of people don't buy because they perceive that the person selling them doesn't care that much. How could you eliminate perceived indifference from Rotary? You know what it looks like in sales? Because a lot of what when I go into a business, because we've got to sort sales out usually, because that's a bit neglected, ask for the sale, like you say, ask more people. But what I would add to that is a powerful purpose. Like what you guys did with those young people today is amazing. That's fantastic, right? We've got to start speaking their language, right? And I would think that As I say, I don't know a lot about Rotary. A couple of my clients are involved in Rotary, and I've spoken to a few people, a few chapters, but I don't know what your purpose is. Not clearly. Not man on the moon clear. What I think it is helping out disadvantaged people. But I don't really know. So my second thing is I would get super clear on that purpose, and you need to be a little creative about how you say it. You know, like people who write and are creative, get them to help you craft it. Because if I were saying the purpose to a 50-year-old, that I would same purpose, but I would phrase it differently for a 30-year-old. So it takes I grew up in advertising industry, so it's really about crafting your message. So that'd be my suggestion. But great question. Thank you.
First of all, 2 points of my observation. Arsenal are a much better side than Liverpool.
This year they are. Come on.
That's the
Last
first
year,
part
not
of
so
my
much.
first part of what you've got to tell us is that I believe my team's better than your team. Secondly, when we go away from here today, we're going to be pumped.
Yep.
Now, I've run conferences, I've spoken at conferences, and I've been to many conferences. Adam Spencer and some great talkers, and your presentation today was fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
But when we go away from here today, we're going to be pumped. We're going to be driving back home, we're going to be talking about all these ideas.
Yep.
Liz Courtney done a fantastic program yesterday on public image.
Yep.
How do we keep that alive? How do we go back and say Arsenal's better than Liverpool? How do we go back and say this is what we learned at the conference?
Well,
that will happen in the future.
I don't want to encourage you to say mistruths that Arsenal's actually better than Liverpool. You know what? How many people, when they were young, played in a sport, a team sport? Like, there's a fairly large amount of people in Australia. What did you, apart from playing the game, what did you do every week? Practice, training, depends whether you're Ted Lasso or it's practice or training, right? You'll get that joke once you watch it. Every single week. But what that actually is a ritual. Right? A ritual. The reason the Catholic Church is one of the oldest, most powerful organisations in the history of humankind is they have rituals. Their rituals keep them together. Now, you have a ritual of meeting once a week. Again, I don't know what's involved in that. But my answer to that is, what rituals can you do which keep this alive? Now, I'll give you a clue. Or I'll tell you one thing that I do with my teams. Every single business team, I coach pharmacy teams, I coach manufacturing teams, I coach them all. But when it breaks down because of one simple thing. And that is, I get them to do ideally 3-minute huddle or 5-minute huddle. Right? Now, has anyone worked in tech and done huddles? Right? So you get together and it's a stand-up meeting, right? It's real fast. So sit down, no time for that. And you have a bit of a format to it. You say, well, and usually the format is, here's what I'm doing, here's what the help I need, and then you go around. Now, my format for that is focus on wins. What was your win yesterday? What was your win last week? What was your win since last meeting? What are you working on? What's your focus? And do you need help? And in all my teams, the second they start focusing on wins, something miraculous happens. Because what do you normally focus on? Problems, right? There's a principle in psychology, and it's this, and this is possibly one of the most powerful things I could leave you with today is, what gets attention gets repeated. Say that again. What gets attention gets repeated. Let me ask you a question. What mostly gets attention? Wins or problems? Guess what gets repeated? Right? The way they train SeaWorld killer whales to jump over is not to tell it all the things it did wrong. When it does the right thing, they give it a fish. And it goes, oh, hang on. And so it goes, I'll do that again. Oh, I've got a fish again. and they just keep raising the standard. So focus on wins, changes everything. Get a regular communication structure. So if I were to adapt the huddle to what you did this week, I would say, okay, like after this or whenever the next break is, get together in groups of 3 or 4 or 5 and go, what was your biggest insight out of that? And what are you going to do about it this week? And then who's going to hold you accountable to that? Who are you going to tell once it's done? Because getting all this done requires focusing on what's working, you know, what you're going to do next, and having someone next to you to kind of go, so, did you do it? And this is, to my great surprise, one of my most important jobs for my private clients is to go, so last week you said you were going to hire this and that. Did you do it? No? Okay, get off the phone. Go and do it now. You know, or they go, oh, geez, I've got a session with Brett in an hour. I better get that thing done that I told him I'd get done. Great, that's my job as a coach done. So, yeah, great question. Thank you. So, rituals, focus on wins, and get together and sort of talk about this stuff more frequently. High frequency of communication, low duration. So, yep.
Thanks, Brett. My name's Louise. I'm from the Rotary Club of Tamworth First Light. And this is going to your question over in the front there. In the last 12 months, we've had 5 young people join our club under 30.
Awesome.
We're fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic as Rotarians doing all these amazing youth programs. You're talking about this generation that we need to be talking about how they learn and how they react to responsibility and everything. That's where we capture them at RILA. So we need you to do all the youth programs, but then capture them after they've done RILA. RILA is such an investment, not only in your community, in those young people, but in your clubs.
So now once they've done that, would you, because one of the ideas that I think is really powerful is, once they've done, and I don't know what that is, but they've done that, they've got much more buy-in to what you're doing at that point, right?
Absolutely.
That word, buy-in.
Absolutely.
How do you get buy-in? Right? How my generation got buy-in was, Brett, done with that. Okay. Off I went, I don't question it. We need to do it differently. And that's a great,
Yeah,
so
it's
getting
one
buy-in.
week program of personal and professional development
Awesome.
for 19 to 27-year-olds, which is what you're talking about
Yeah.
here, that's going to be the future of this organisation and your communities. And you've got Jack running around here doing, we've got up the back here, we've got young Katie coming in as a president of the Lower Mid Coast next year, going through doing that. We've got so many young people that are coming through, and great little clubs that sponsor all the time. So that's where, and we're trying to do things different.
So the way, the shortcut to how you get buy-in is you don't tell anyone anything. You ask them. It's called an ask model of leadership. So you'll notice that what have my answers to you guys been most of the time? I ask you a question. Because actually I know you've got the answer, I just need to draw it out of you somehow. And where there's a gap, I'll fill in the gap. But it's an ask model of leadership. So let me suggest you ask all of those under 30s, start asking them lots of questions, be good at listening. Because I think you'll find enormous insight they've got to give you. Cool, where are we up to?
Yeah, I am Peter from Coffs Harbour. Rounding off on the last question, which brings me around to what I was going to talk to you about, perceived indifference, and how Rotarians, especially those who've been around for a long time, like myself and a lot of others, we know all the answers.
Yes.
We're very deficient in being able to convey that to other people when we need to explain to them what we've enjoyed for so many years. The problem is that they can't put the words together that are going to satisfy the person that they're talking to. But my question is, now that we've got things like ChatGPT, who can write an answer, and don't laugh, I've seen songs done, I've seen poems.
Oh, I wrote an introduction to a speech I'm doing next week.
Put your information in there together and ask it to give you an answer that gives you a perspective.
Well, if I could offer an observation, which is, let me start with this. The smartest people I've ever met, and I've met some really smart people, don't actually tell you a lot of stuff. What do they do instead? They're curious, aren't they? They're like, Brett, so you're a coach? How does that work? What's that like? What kind of person are you? And I'm this brilliant person, I'm like, stop asking questions, I want to ask you questions. The smartest people in the world don't talk much. They do a lot of listening. They ask good questions, right? So, I think you've articulated a brilliant problem that we have is you guys have a world of experience that you want to share about what you love about Rotary, right? It's pretty much like my mum going, or my dad going, hey, Brett, I want to give you advice as you go into the workforce. I think, Dad, I don't want your advice. I love you, but I don't want your advice. Instead, you lead people to the realisation by asking them questions. And it could sound like this. Talking to a young person, cool, what do you do that you really love? And they go, oh, play video games. Oh, okay, what about connecting with other people? What do you do there? Oh, I guess I go out with my mates. Do you have any interest in, what are your interests? And they might say, oh, I like coaching, I love the rugby team, or so you kind of like helping out people. Oh yeah, I had it tough when my dad left when I was early and I like blah, 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 and you ask some questions. Oh, wouldn't it be cool if there was an organisation here that you could be part of that would do that? Yeah, it would be cool. You look at it and go, so that's called Rotary. Right? Because they want the same things you want, but I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want us telling them. They want us asking them. And, I've got this very, very smart, literally a rocket scientist, who expected me as his coach to turn up and know things he doesn't know. You just ask me questions all the time. I'm like, yeah. I'm better at asking questions than you'll ever be. Because he was brought up with a PhD in blah, 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 whatever he's got, where the highest value was knowing the answer. This is the difference between then and now, is that the highest value is knowing how to craft a question. And ChatGPT, which is an AI bot, which will literally do anything you want for it, if you say, write me an ad for Rotary in the style of Dr. Zeus, it will. Right? And I could do it right here for you right now. The most important aspect of that is not that it can do it, it's that you have to engineer the right prompts to get the right answer. And it's actually called prompt engineering, which is another way of saying asking better questions.
Okay, one last question, Guy.
Andrew Burgess from Walker Club. Brett, how do you deal with entrenched apathy?
Entrenched apathy. Look,
Short answer, please.
short answer, right? I'm really clear about the purpose of a team. And if I use the soccer team as an example, if I'm on a soccer team and I say, what's our purpose? We go, okay, we want to win the grand final. Cool. Are you prepared to let me do what I've got to do to help you win the grand final? Yes, coach, yes. And if someone's entrenched apathy, I'm like, so you promised me you'd step up and do that and you're not stepping up. What's going on? They'll either be, yeah, you're right, I promised. So it's actually managing by agreement. You get them to agree and maybe they'll step up. Or, and there's many of these, they just won't step up no matter what. Even though they'll tell you they will, they won't step up. And I'm like, listen, I love you. You're a wonderful human being, but this is not the right team for you. Let me find another team for you. I think I've done that every month for the last 3 years in all of the businesses. Because if you've got someone with a bad attitude or a bad culture in your business, it just drags everyone down. And I just say, look, this isn't the right place for you because we're going here and you don't want to go there. And that's cool, but this isn't the team for you. We move you on. And every single time we've moved someone on, it's like, that picture with the anchor? It's like the anchor came up and off we went. So they've either got to get on board or, with love, move you to somewhere that you're happier with and we're happy with, because I'm not willing to accept you on the team. I'm not willing to accept passengers on the field, personally. But I say it as nicely as I possibly can. I don't hold anything against them. But I'm pretty, politely firm about it. Is that helpful?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Brett, and I'd like you to join us in thanking Brett for this afternoon. And Brett, here's a little gift with some goodies from the Tamworth Rotary.
This is my first ever visit to Tamworth, and I'm really impressed. Thank you.
Okay, so while Brett's just getting his things together, we have a quick video to show on the Merv van. So don't forget, it's out the front, and go and get a hand drink. It's free.
Rotary's Merv project is out there saving lives. It's for all those Aussie blood.